serenity prayer?
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Mark, our 45-minute speaker.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mark, and I am an alcoholic. And I'm definitely grateful to be here tonight. Man, it's nice to see a lot of people. It's nice to see faces of friends and people that I've met since I've been here in DHS, and just build friendships, acquaintances, or just familiar faces. Just like Kirby was saying, I don't have to do this by myself. And that's good news. Because, I need a lot of help. I still need a lot of help. And I have people around me that are willing to help me. And through that, I've learned how to help others and to be there for other people. And, I'm sitting there and I've been busy. I've been busy this week, and I've been doing a lot of things, working and doing life, because one thing this program has helped me to do is be a part of life again, to be a part of society and to be a part of things that are going on outside of out of my house. I'm not stuck in my house today. I'm not stuck. And so I've been really busy. So I didn't really have time to really sit down and say, okay, what am I going to say and what am I going to do, or what am I going to tell everybody? And the thing is working this program, like Kirby was saying, working these steps and coming to meetings and doing the deal. It's become an active part of my life. My sobriety date is March 12, 2009, coming up on 5 years. And that's all as a result of getting a sponsor, working the steps, and as a result of that, getting in contact with the power greater than myself that has helped me to, or that didn't help me. He himself, God, has removed that obsession to drink. And to me, that's a miracle, because I'm the type of alcoholic who couldn't stop drinking no matter what. I had to drink. I did not have a choice. I lost the power to choose whether I was going to drink or not drink. And, so for me, just this week has been living life, and I enjoy it. And I work with other alcoholics, and I get into this book with them, and I get to learn more every time. I get to learn more about myself, and I see a lot of myself based on what I hear them share with me and where they're at and what they're going through. And I get the chance to look at myself and say, man, I can relate, I can connect. And so coming here, when I came to the meeting, I was like, oh man, what am I, I still have defects. I still have insecurities. I still have fears. I still have things, and I still have this brain right here, this mind, that will try to block me, that will try to say, I'm not good enough, will tell me that, what are you going to, there's a lot of people there. There's people that know your defects. There's people that know who you are, and it's not going to be good enough. And so what I have to do is I have to pray and say, God, I need help. God, I need help. I need help to, get me out of the way, remove my difficulties and my defects and all the things that are blocking me, remove that fear so that things that I share today or tonight will help someone who's still sick and who's suffering, maybe still drinking, I don't know, that maybe doesn't have a solution, Somebody who's either thinking about drinking but doesn't want to, or somebody who's drinking and wants to stop but doesn't know how. And that's who my message is for. My message is for the one who's still suffering. So if you're not suffering, and you got the steps and you got the program, and you have a higher power, and you're in a good place, my hope for that is that the things that I share will connect, and we can be united, and we can work together to help the guy who's still sick. My experience is that there's going to be a couple people that might be offended by what I say, that aren't going to like what I say, or before I even open my mouth, there's already a prejudice towards me. And so with that, I develop a lot of insecurities because I have to walk through fear. I have to have the courage with the power greater than myself to be able to walk through that. And the program has taught me that. And so let's see, I took my first drink when I was, I think like 10, 12 years old. I don't remember exactly, but I would drink, I would sneak drinks from the refrigerator from my father when he'd ask me to get a beer. I'd open it up for him and take a little drink before I gave it to him. And I would be manipulative because I would ask him if I could open it for him and then give it to him. So I'd like to open it for him. And that's the excuse I use. And so what I do is I get out of the fridge and open it, take a little drink there, and then walk out where he saw me and give it to him. So I was already hiding my drinking right off the get-go, you know. And you know, my first time I got drunk, I think I was 14 years old, 15, and you know, my sister was older than me, and so she would drink. And I remember I went into a room and snuck around her room, and I was just nosy. You know, just a nosy teenager, and so I wanted to see what my sister was up to, and I opened the closet, and there was a bottle, you know, a bottle of alcohol, and I picked that up, and I opened up the cap, and I drank it, and I put the cap back on, and I went downstairs, and I was watching some TV, and man, all of a sudden, I felt different. I felt an effect that I never felt before, and it felt really, really good, so I decided that if that felt good, I know there's more up there. You know, I knew there was more underneath that cap, you know, so I went back up there and I drank some more, and I went back downstairs, and I felt even better. So I said, man, if I drink some more, I'll feel even better. And I kept doing that, and I blacked out. And I woke up in the hospital, staring at a white light, my family all around me, and I was like, man, they found out that I was drinking, you know. And I had a lot of guilt and shame. I didn't want my family to know that I did that, you know. And I didn't have a drink for another year, 2 years, until I met some friends in the neighborhood. I didn't go to high school with them, but we were good friends. We rode skateboards, we rode bikes, we did all those things, played around the neighborhood and stuff. And we all decided. One of my friends was out of town; they're gonna have a party, so I was like, cool, you know, I'll go hang out with you guys and drink there and see what happens. You know, I never did that. And you know, growing up, going to school, I went to a Catholic private school growing up, and so I had been introduced to God through that, and I had a big fear of God, and I went to a private Catholic high school as well, and I didn't really, when I went to high school, I didn't connect. You know, I had a lot of fears, a lot of insecurities. I didn't feel like I was good enough. I didn't have the right clothes, you know. I started getting acne real bad on my face, so I was like, man, I'm coming in already, you know, below what I think I should. You know, I didn't meet up to what I thought I needed to be to connect with people and make friends and be a part of. So I was coming in already beat down, and so I didn't connect with a lot of people. And so when these friends in the neighborhood say they're having a party and we were hanging out, I'm like, well, let me see if I can do it that way. And so I went and hung out at that party, and I remember I took a few drinks, and man, when I put those few drinks inside of me, the effect that produced was so dramatic that, you know, I've heard speakers say it, and I can relate to it. I felt all the pimples fall off my face, you know. I felt them all fall off my face, and all of a sudden I wasn't scared, you know. All the things that were blocking me were gone, you know, and so I didn't have those insecurities anymore. So I was able to be myself. I was able to be who I thought I was. I was able to be, I was able to breathe and just be relaxed and listen and talk. And I remember I felt like, man, this is what I've been missing all my life. It opened doors for me. It gave me that new freedom. And I equate it to a spiritual experience, because to me it was a spiritual experience, because I had suddenly realized that alcohol was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. And the only problem with that was that I always needed another drink to get it. Because once I stopped drinking, I would have to go back to that insecure, full of fear. I couldn't look you in the eye. You didn't like me right off the bat. And so I needed that next drink to get me back to that place where I can just be who I wanted to be, or who I thought I would be, or whatever was inside of me. It was just better, it seemed like. The only problem with that is that when I drank, I couldn't stop. So I'd start drinking, and I'd end up drinking I'd get drunk every time. And as a result of that, I had to learn how to manage and control my drinking. And I needed to manage and control my drinking so that I didn't black out, because my perception at that time is when I blacked out, that's when I woke up the next day and I'd get the phone calls, or I'd hear my friends say, "Man, Mark, did you know what you did last night?" And every time I'd hear that, I'd be like, "All right, what did I do?" You know, and then I'd have so much guilt and shame because I couldn't believe some of the things that I'd done. And so I had to manage and control my drinking to the point of blackout, but not blacking out, so that I can remember. So if anybody said, "Hey, do you know what you did?" I'd at least have an idea of what I did, so I'm not baffled by what they told me, you know. And my problem was that I could not always manage and control that. I tried doing it by drinking beer only, you know, and I was able to do it better, because when I drank hard liquor, I would just black out like immediately, and I would turn into a monster, and the things that they told me I'd do were scaring me, you know, really bad. And so when I drank beer, I thought that I was managing and controlling it, but I would still be the unlovely creature, you know. I would still cause harm to people, you know, and I couldn't manage even, you know, having a driver's license, because I would give the keys to somebody and say, "Hey, drive me so I can drink," and I was so selfish and self-centered, because the person I give the keys didn't even have their license. They weren't even 16, you know. And so I'm putting this person in harm for me to be selfish so that I could drink. Or when I would want the keys back, and then I would have to drive people home, and I would do that a lot of times in my drinking. So, you know, even though my intentions and my motives were good when I would drink, I found that I would compromise those things and just do what I needed to do for myself. It didn't matter who was around me, whether it was family, friends, or anybody, you know. So I finally got to the point where, you know, we're not finally, I'm not going to go to finally yet, but I progressively drank, and it progressively got worse. I was still able to work. I was still able to go to school. I was still able to have my family and all those things. So my perception was that my life was still manageable. My perception was that I wasn't harming anybody, you know. And I ended up starting college, and I was going to college, and I got really, really good grades. My dad told me if you went to college, you could do anything you want. You know, you could do anything you want. And so I went to college, and my perception of what he said was, "Mark, if you go to college and you get straight A's, you could do anything you want. You can drink as much as you want. You can act a fool as much as you want. You can do anything in this life." But what he was really telling me, and I just learned this like a few months ago because I was thinking about it, and I was like, what he was really saying was, if you go to college and get good grades, that you can be anything you want. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever. But my thinking as an alcoholic is, if I get straight A's, he's going to leave me alone. My family's going to leave me alone. They're going to let me drink as long as I'm getting good grades. As long as I'm meeting the expectations of everybody around me, I can drink. And that's what I did. That's what I did. And I was able to do it my first 3 years, I was in school for 6.5 years. The last year, I already knew I was going to graduate, so I started to lay off on the school, and I started to drink more. And during the times of my school, I was still drinking. You know, I'll still get DUI, still get in trouble with the law and all that stuff. And I would try to tell the police, "Don't you know who I am? I'm going to be the greatest engineer on the planet." And you know, just say, "Get in the back," you know. But I really believed that I was something. I really believed that I was something. And so I still got into trouble. I still had consequences, but those consequences, whether it was a messed up relationship, she didn't like me, she didn't want to be with me, or family's mad at me, or employers, or what, it doesn't matter. Those consequences did not stop me from drinking. And I got married while I was in college. I had a son, a daughter, and I was drunk at my wedding. I was passed out on the couch on my wedding day, you know. And I remember the picture that they took of me just passed out, just all, with the beer can. And so my drinking, all I cared about was drinking. I was looking forward to the next times I could drink. And when I got out of college, I had gotten this job while I was in college. They hired me and said, "You're going to start after college." And they did a background check and all this stuff. And because I had gotten in trouble with the law, they took back their offer. I think I had a court case or a warrant or something that I never took care of, because when I'm drinking, I don't care about responsibilities. I don't care about the courts. I don't care about making payments to DUI classes, or I don't care about paying my fines and all that. So it turned into a warrant. So when they did the background check, it showed that they took back their offer. And so everybody else that I was going to school with, my friends, had jobs, and then I was left with no job. And of course, I got a big resentment. And so what I did was I learned how to play the guitar, started drinking more, and put myself and my family, I didn't care. I didn't care. And but after about 4 months of doing that, I got to a place where I was going to lose my family, and I was just getting out of control. And it was during that time I started going to church. I said, man, I need help, so I started going to church. And I remember I was able to stop drinking. I was able to stop. And I lasted for I think it was about 6 months to a year. And I picked up a couple of drinks, two tall cans of Budweiser, and I downed them. And I stopped, and I went home. And because I was starting to get that contact with God, I started to understand a little more, I couldn't lie. And so I got honest and told him, and then there were some consequences with that. And I stopped drinking again for a period of time. And then I got restless, irritable, discontent. I started to drive home from work, and I was afraid to go home. I was afraid to walk in the door. And so, and I was feeling so much anxiety that what I would do is I'd stop into like a market or something, and I'd go shopping because I had to make an excuse. What do we need? You guys need anything from the market? Oh, you do? Okay, I'll go get it. And so I'd go to the market, and then I'd come out in the car, and I'd buy myself a drink, and I'd sit in the car, and I'd have that drink. And then I'd go home and act like I didn't, that didn't happen. And I did that on occasion. And there was one day I was driving home. I went to the market, and I actually didn't get the drink, and I was driving home, and the police pulled me over because I had a cracked taillight. And I was like, man, I would have gotten a DUI just like that. And I thought, man, thank you, God. I was like, thank you, God, for that, And I thought, man, I need to stop drinking. But I didn't stop, I still picked up that next drink. I picked it up. And then I couldn't stop. My life got very unmanageable. And there I was again, full force drinking, and I couldn't stop it again. I tried a program at the church. They had a chemical recovery program. And I tried that, and I was able to stop for 2 years. And but the one thing that I remember now and realize was that I always had that feeling inside that I wasn't a part of, and something was still wrong with me. It seemed like everybody else was living life and doing the things they needed to do, but for me, it always seemed like I was always stuck in this feeling of like, The book calls it restless, irritable, and discontent. I was suffering from a spiritual malady, a malady that I didn't understand. I was suffering in ignorance, and I remember I came back to Los Angeles. I had gotten my dream job working for an oil refinery, and it was my dream job. I got that job, and I remember I lasted 2 years in that job, and I took a drink again. And I was doing good. I was doing good in the job. I took a drink again, and within about a year, they were questioning me, Mark. What's up? What's going on? And I remember they gave me a disability for like 3 months. Hey, Mark, go get right. Go get with the help you need. I told them, yeah, I'm gonna get some help. And I disability was full pay, so they didn't. My salary stayed the same. And I went home, and I remember I need to get some help. And the next day, I was like, wait a minute. I said, I got 3 months. They're gonna give me my full paycheck. It's like a 3-month vacation. So I proceeded to go to the store and get myself enough alcohol to last through the day, and I drank. And I did that for 3 months. And the last 5 days, my wife at the time, she asked me for divorce. And that was unacceptable. And so I got full of resentments, full of anger, and I drank. And drank more, and I was just in a rage. And, and I was in a rage because of my pride. How dare you? How dare you do that to me? Don't you know who I am? And I remember I stopped drinking for 5 days so I can get ready to go back to work, because I knew if I if I drank till the end and I went back to work, I wouldn't even make it to work that first day. So I stopped drinking for 5 days, went back to work. I lasted 2 weeks without a drink, and then there I was drinking again. Except this time my employer started to tell me, Mark, you got to change it, you got to change it. But this time, instead of saying, hey, Mark, they didn't pamper me anymore. What they did was they said, hey, Mark, come with me. And then they took me out in security, and they said, you got to go. And I was like, oh, man, I remember feeling the devastation, like I can't believe it. And I remember leaving and looking at it and going, man, that sucks. But then I got in the car, and I was driving home, and I said, wait a minute. I can drink. And I remember I went straight to the liquor store, started drinking, and that's what I would do. I don't care what the consequence was, I don't care if it was good or bad, there was a drink waiting for me. And so from that point, for the next 4 years, I proceeded to drink as much alcohol as I possibly could, because by this time I was already getting hopeless. I didn't care anymore. All I cared about was drinking. So I worked. The only reason I worked was so that I can get the next drink. The only reason, sometimes I'd run out of money, and the only reason I pick up the phone and call my friends is to ask them for more money, so I can keep doing what I do. And I'd smoke screen that and mask it. Hey, man, let's hang out, dude. What's up, man? Let's hang out, man. I haven't seen you for a while. Yeah, come on down. I got $5. Let's get some drinks. And then I want to drink more, so he'd have to buy the rest. Whatever the case is. And for 4 years it was just like that. During that time there was a period of 6 months where I stayed. I lived in a hotel room. I was paying like 13 something a month just to stay in a hotel room when there was apartments like right next door for like $600-800 a month. And but the reason I wanted to stay in the hotel room at that time was, what my perception was at that time was, I don't want to clean, I don't want to do anything, I just want to drink. I want to be able to leave. If I leave, I want to come back, my room's clean. I don't want to have to clean nothing. I don't want no responsibilities at all. I just want to drink. And I thought, man, I had arrived. I don't have a family telling me what to do. I don't have anybody telling me what to do. I'm good. This is going to be so good. And I'd get in that hotel room and I'd be like, yes, like I'm free. That's what I thought. I thought I was free. And so I would drink and I'd get blacked out, and then I'd find that job. And I remember I got the hotel room right across the street from my job, so I wouldn't be late. And but I would drink so much and go to bed so late that I was still late for work. So then after a few months, they let me go. I'd find another job, they'd let me go. Find another job, they'd let me go. And each job that I got, they'd pay me more money. So that's when I started to come to the rooms by myself. So I'd come into the rooms during that time, and I'd be buzzed, or I'd be drunk, but I wouldn't be blacked out. So my drunk being blacked out was I could still function. And so I would still listen to what you guys said, and I'd come to the meetings, and I'd hear a lot of different people share a lot of different things. This was out in Long Beach, and I would come to a couple of meetings, and I'd hear, I just got to get a job. I just got to get a job. I just got to get my kids back. I just got to, and everybody was sharing their problems. And I'm like, man, well, I got a job. I guess I'm good. You guys aren't drinking, but you guys aren't drinking. Look for a job. I'm like, I got one. My kids, I get to see my kids every weekend, so that's not an issue. I'm not blocked from seeing my kids. I'm good. I could keep drinking. And, so when I left here, I'm like, man, what do I got to stop for? I'm going to go in there and get some problems. I don't need any problems. That's what I thought at that time. So what I did was I went back to the hotel room and I kept drinking. And I'm sure there was the message carried, but I wasn't listening for the message. I wanted any excuse not to have to do this. I wanted any excuse not to have to. But I was in that place where I couldn't stop anymore. When I would get down to no money, all of a sudden I'd become willing. When I didn't have any more money in my pocket and all that pain and all that, And what I really wanted was a drink, but I knew I couldn't get that. So that's when I would come in the rooms. That's when I would come in here and just be like, I just need help. I want to stop. I would tell you guys everything that you wanted to hear. And then I'd get a sponsor. And I wasn't going to get a sponsor that was going to take me to the steps, because I would sit in the meeting. People say, get a sponsor, work the steps. Get somebody that has working knowledge of this book, the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, and get into the steps. That's what the solution is. And then I'd hear some people talk, yeah, you know, meeting, get to a lot of meetings, get to a lot of meetings, get to a lot of meetings. So I would hang out with the guys that got to a lot of meetings. You know, I didn't really I didn't know what I didn't know what the program was. All I knew is that I needed to stop drinking, but not permanently. Just long enough to get the job back again so I can make some money so I can go drink again. Just long enough so I can get that job to make some money to get that car, and then so I can drink again. Just long enough so I can get the job, get the car, get the license, so I can have a relationship so I can drink again. You know, if you're a woman and you didn't drink, man, that was going to be hard. Unless you let me drink as much as I wanted and you were okay with that. But typically that wasn't going to last. You know, so I was looking for somebody who was drinking like me, and that didn't last either. And so what happened was I would stay in here long enough to get those things back, get the job back, you know, get the car, get whatever I thought I needed to make me okay so I can go back and do what I need to do. This time it's going to be different. And it would last maybe 3 months or 6 months. I'd show my face in here every once in a while, you know, try to get some meetings. But then once I got all that back where I thought I needed it, I thought I could take that drink again and it would be different. So I went through 4 years of doing that. And during those 4 years, what I got was enough evidence to convince me that, you know, because I see the pattern every 3-4 months. And then the period started getting shorter and shorter and shorter, you know. But I was still drinking during the whole time. I just wanted to stay in here long enough to get some control or some manageability in my life, you know. And finally I got to the place where I was drinking so much that I was afraid to walk out my door. I was afraid to leave the door to go to the store to buy more. And I would buy enough to last me through the day, and I would drink as much as I could, try to manage it so that by the time I fell asleep, I'd be close to that blackout point so that I would pass out and then come to in the morning. And then when I'd wake up in the morning, it'd be the sky would be clear, the birds would be singing, and I'd hear the birds, and I would wake up in so much terror and so much fear because I'm like, I got to find a job. And it would just be like, it would be chaos and insanity going on in my head. And the only thing I knew how to do was to pick up a drink. So I would wake up and say, is there beer in the fridge? Is there alcohol? And if there wasn't, then I would have to get the courage to walk out the door. I'd have to check, see how much money I had, and get that alcohol in me. And I did that on a daily basis. That's what it took me on a daily basis. That's what the book calls a chronic. I was the chronic alcoholic. I could not stop doing that. I got to a place where I wanted to stop. I remember I'd wake up in the morning. And I'd get on my knees, and I would beg God. Please don't let me drink. Please help me. Please help me not to do this anymore. And as I would be praying to God, I would be thinking of the 2 beers that were in the fridge. And I remember I'd pray as long as I could because I thought if I prayed really long, He'd hear me. And there would be times where I'd be praying and I'd be like, God, you know what? I gotta go. I gotta go drink those. And I would go take those few drinks. And I could breathe. Then I could pick up the phone. Then I can get the courage to leave the house. And I did that for 4 years. And coming in and out of the rooms, And finally I got to a point where I heard enough times, you know, because I tried going to a lot of meetings. I had sponsors that took me a lot of meetings. The only thing I hadn't done were these 12 steps, you know, and my drinking got progressively worse to the point where I wanted to die. I didn't know if I wanted to live anymore. I didn't know if it was going to be worth it. The mountain of pain and damage and wreckage of people's lives, courts and all that stuff was so big that I didn't know if I was ever going to get back to to life or to any type of normal life. And so I would drink and consider, is it even worth it to live? And I got to a place where I started to accepting the fact that I was going to die. And I'd start playing the tapes. Would my kids be okay? Are my kids going to be okay? And I would start to get to that place of acceptance. And one day I woke up to that fact that I accepted that I was going to die, and it scared me to death. And that day I came into this room, you know, and I started to listen. I really started to listen. And I was still drinking, but I started to listen. I started to open my ears. I got some of that willingness. I got a little bit of willingness. I got a little bit of hope. Because during the 4 years that I was coming, I saw people that were in here, coming in just like me, who were starting to work their steps and who got sponsors and were doing the deal, working the program out of the book, and their lives were progressively getting better. And my life was progressively getting worse. So when I would ask them, hey, how did you do? What are you doing? And they would all say the same thing. I got a sponsor, and I'm working the steps. And they would tell me, I'm on step 4, or I'm on step 5, or I'm on step 6. And I'm like, well, what are you learning, And they would explain to me what they were learning, and I'd be like, man, I don't got none of that. I definitely don't have any of that, And so I got that sponsor, I would pay attention to the rooms. I got a copy of the book, and I started reading it by myself. And then I'd come to the rooms, and then I would watch everybody. I was a newcomer, paying attention to everybody. And I would see the people that were working the steps and practicing the principles. There was something different about them. And I remember there was one guy in particular, and I remember saying to myself, I got to find a guy like that. I got to find a guy like that. And in my alcoholic brain at that time, because it's funny when I think about it now, is I looked throughout the meetings for a guy like that. For like a month, I looked for a guy like that. And after a month, and I got a couple of other sponsors during that time, and then one day I woke up and said, what am I doing? And I called him up and I said, will you be my sponsor? And he said, I'll be happy to be your sponsor. He's like, do you have a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions? He didn't say it like that. He was on the phone, so I couldn't see the book, but I had him in my room. And I said, yeah. I said, I got him. He said, okay. He said, I want you to open up the book and start reading it. And I want you to read the doctor's opinion and Bill's story. I want you to write a letter to alcohol. And I want you to tell it goodbye, that you're not going to be needing it in your life anymore. And treat it as you would a relationship. And I said, okay. And I hung up the phone. I went in the room. I didn't do it right away. I didn't. Because I started to think about it like, wait a minute, this is for reals. Like, this is for reals. I was like, do I really mean this? And I remember I spent like a few days oh, really? Like, is this, like when I write it, am I going to mean it, And it blocked me. I was like scared. I was afraid. And then I finally got to a place, I'm like, are you serious? You're considering like, if you want to go back to that life again, By this time I already had like 30 days sober, just coming to meetings and work, just trying to find that sponsor. And at that point I became willing to go any length. I was willing to go any length. So I got the pen and paper and I wrote that letter, and you know what, when I finished writing that letter, I actually meant it. And called him back and he told me, okay, I want you to read the doctor's opinion and I want you to write a summary of your life. I want you to write your story using Bill's story as an outline. And I did that. I opened up the book, got a pen and paper, and as I was reading, I was writing my story. And I would ask myself, I'm like, it doesn't give me directions to do that in the book. I said, well, Bill W. wrote a story, and some of the alcoholics that were in the beginning wrote their story, so I'm just doing what they did, I want to be able to connect to Bill. Why not? So I did that, and through those, when we got together, what I found through just those 2 chapters, but if you read the book, if you look at it, the chapter, There's a Solution and More About Alcoholism, give you a lot of information on what an alcoholic is, how the book defines what a real alcoholic is. Because there's a lot of people that say they're an alcoholic, but when you read this book, it tells you exactly what a real alcoholic is. And when I read this book, I wasn't reading it to find out who in here was a real alcoholic or not. When I read it, I was so relieved to find out that there was other people in this world that understood me finally. I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't. And I connected. And it turned out my sponsor was a real alcoholic too. I was like, wow, this is really cool. I'm like, this is really cool. And, the stuff that Kirby shared, for me in the doctor's opinion about that obsession of the mind, the allergy of the body. It's that allergy in my body that differentiates me from those that can drink normally, We can all may have the obsession and say, man, I really want to get a drink. And I'm going with the crowd, let's go get a drink, All right? And then the non-alcoholics are the ones that aren't the real alcoholic, the ones that don't need these steps, can say, okay, man, I got to go. And then there's me. Where are you going? There's still like 20 in the fridge. It's like, oh, you guys are all going to leave, so can I have all those 20? And I would proceed to drink all those myself. It didn't matter if there one person stayed, I'm good. And if that person didn't have integrity to leave, and I can make them compromise and hold them hostage until I got really drunk and then said, okay, we go to sleep now, then they're going to go for the ride till like 6 in the morning, you know. And I got the obsession, and I got the allergy. The allergy is what makes me different. I can't stop. Once I put it in, once I put alcohol in my body, when alcohol says jump, I say how high, in which direction. And I'm going for the ride. If I put it in there, I'm going for the ride. Or I'm going to take you for a ride. We're going for a ride. If you're a real alcoholic, we're going to be in trouble because I usually end up in hospitals, jails, or institutions. And most people, I find that when I drink, they end up jumping ship before me. And what I end up doing is developing a fierce resentment towards them, especially if I'm in a relationship with them. It's unacceptable to leave the ship without me. You know, and my problem is that I go down with the ship. You know, I go down with the ship. And I'm the last one on the ship. You know, and I have expectations of other people. I become very selfish and self-centered when I drink. You know, in this book it talks about, you know, alcohol's but a symptom. And once you get past the first step, it's not about alcohol anymore. You know, alcohol was just my symptom. Alcohol was a solution to a malady, to a problem that was within me that I chose alcohol as a solution to my problems. You know, it didn't work. Evidence showed me it didn't work. So, you know, when I got through the first 2 steps, you know, read through We Agnostics and came to believe in a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. In We Agnostics, it says, just the willingness to believe that there's a power greater than you is enough to start this process. I don't have to go to Tibet and go hang out with the monks and meditate for a year to get contact with the power. I don't have to go to church and jump through hoops and do all the requirements and all the rules and regulations in order to get in contact with that power. I don't have to go to the top of the mountain and watch the sunrise every morning to get in contact with that power. Those are all good things. Those are all positive, good things. But the only requirement for me to make contact with that power is a willingness to believe that he's there and that he's going to help me. And I remember, because I used to tell my sponsor, I'm like, I go to church, I know who God is. I know who God is. And he's like, well, did that belief in that power keep you sober? And I'd be like, oh, I couldn't lie because I was drunk in meetings, you know what I mean? I couldn't lie and say, yes, he did. And then if I did say yes, he'd be like, well, why are you here? You know, so I had to concede to my innermost self that I was powerless, you know? And so I had to come to believe that there was a power greater than me, the willingness to believe there's a power greater than myself. When I got to that place of accepting that, I was able to move on to the 3rd step. And in my 3rd step, I took some time. It took me a little while to get to that place because, man, that decision was going to affect the rest of my life. It was going to affect the effectiveness of the rest of my program. And if I did it, I wanted to make sure that I was serious, because if I wasn't, I didn't want to go back and drink. You know, I didn't want to drink. And I remember I got with my sponsor and we got on our hands and knees and we said the 3rd step prayer. And I remember I got up and I was like, all right, what's supposed to happen now, you know? And I was like excited, like, whoa, is something going to happen? And what happened was we got into the 4th step. And what I realized now is that I needed that power, because without that power greater than myself, there is no way I'm searching into my life and looking into my past and digging all that wreckage and all that demoralization and all that stuff, all the resentments, all the fears, all the sex inventory. Are you kidding? Do you know what I did when I was drinking? There is no way that I'm looking at that, you know. And because if I look at that, I'm going to have to face that, and I might actually have to, you know, deal with it. And what I realized is that every time I drank, I was just pushing it, trying to push it farther and farther away. And so I got that power, and I started to if you do it according to the book, it's not that difficult. The fear I had was a smoke screen. It was a smoke screen that blocked me from ever doing these steps. But when I finally worked the steps thoroughly with a sponsor that walked me through this book and read this book with me, by the time I got to the 4th step, I was able to have that courage to take that step and to write everything out. And when I did, when I did, I realized it was just smoke that was in front of me. I was able to walk through that. I got to the other side of that, and I was like, that's it. That's all it was. But the book says that pain is the price of admission to a new life. Pain is a price. You got to pay the price. Not everybody gets through these steps. It is a privilege and an honor to have the ability to work these steps. Not everybody comes in, yeah, I'll work the steps. I'll work them. Because when you get down to doing the work, there's some pain that you're going to have to go through. But pain is the price of humility. And pain is the touchstone of spiritual progress. And I remember by the time I got done with my 4-step, I was so afraid of the 5th step. By the time I got done with my 4-step, I was like, man, I don't want to live like that anymore. And I got to a place where I really wanted to tell my sponsor, because I did not want to go back to that, because now I was facing the facts of where my life took me. And I was like, no, I don't want it. I don't want it. And so when I got with my sponsor, I was willing to start the process of the resentments. And by the time we got through the resentments, I was ready to deal with the fears. And by the time I was honest about all my fears, I had the fear went away, so where I can share the parts of the relationship of the sex inventory. And when I got through that, there was so much grace extended that I was like, seriously, that's all it was. I couldn't believe it, And then through the 5th step, my defects were right there, glaring, And I became entirely ready for have God to remove those. Well, yeah, get rid of these defects, because if you don't get rid of these, I'm going to go back to that. And so I humbly asked God to remove those defects with my sponsor. And there was changes that took place in my personality. There was a psychic change started to take place. I started to have a spiritual experience. I started to have more hope than what I did when I came in. I started to connect with people in the fellowship that were working the steps and practicing the principles. And I started to reach my hand out to the newcomers and the people that were suffering. And I made that list of all the people that I had harmed. And I started to make amends to others. The promises in the book, they're true. If you don't know what those promises are, find somebody to show you. Start to read this book and find out what those promises are, because they come true. If you're willing to go to any length and you're ready to take some direction from the book. A sponsor's responsibility, or spiritual advisor, because the word sponsor is not even in the book. Spiritual advisor. Somebody who's going to advise me on spiritual matters. Take me through the steps, a spiritual program of action. That's going to help me to have a spiritual experience. That's going to remove the obsession. And so step 10, continue to take inventory. Step 10 is just the practice of the rest of the steps on a daily basis, continuously. 11, prayer and meditation helps me to keep that contact with God. I got to keep that power so I can keep working the steps and practicing them. And step 12, had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice those principles in all our affairs. I had to suffer, I had to get beaten down by alcohol to get me into this room, to get me willing to go down the road to work these steps. Like they say, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, there's a way out. You don't have to be stuck, you don't have to be trapped. My pride and my ego kept me stuck. I had to get that beaten out of me by alcohol. I had to come in full of terror and be like, oh, my name's Mark, I'm an alcoholic, and I need help. That tough guy was stripped away. And today I know what courage is. Courage today for me is the willingness to be honest with another human being, even though I feel like a fool. I feel like a fool sometimes when I'm getting honest about the things that are really inside of me. But I find that when I do that and I practice that, because it's like, oh, here it is. And then I turn around and they're still there. I'm like, really? And let me try it again. They're still there. And as I keep practicing that, I get to a place where I feel secure. I feel like, man, people aren't abandoning me. People are still my friend. And, get a sponsor. Work these steps. Get somebody that's going to sit down with you and read this book with you and follow the directions that are in this book, and you will have that spiritual experience. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. This is where the path is. Thank you for letting me share.